members of the school and about just giving an update about kind of big picture summary of where the school is with their budget. So thank you, Sky and Zach, for coming to give a quick summary of that. I would be inclined, I know that there are folks who are planning to attend from recreation, both the library and the rec committee, and since they are not here yet to talk about their items.
I'm the library rep.
Oh, you are the library rep tonight. Okay, so we can either go through what we have here quickly, or we can start with the school and then go through the spreadsheets. Anybody's pleasure. Well, since you guys are here and may not want to stay here, would you like to give quick kind of 5-minute summary?
I like where you're thinking, so I even brought nice handouts so you guys can have. This is a copy of the budget.
Obviously, I
comparison.
will not have the school budget. I don't have that copy.
So this was the budget that was voted on and approved by the school board last night.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure quite where you want to start, but what I'll say is we are happy with where we ended up in terms of the total overall dollars spent year over year on the school itself. So if you look at the sum of the operating budget, the debt service construction, and then the different capital reserve funds, you're looking at an increase of approximately 3% year over year in terms of total dollars. The reason that the total school tax liability looks as ugly as it does at the bottom of the page ties directly back to the $400,000 that was found last year that was given back, effectively given back or used to offset the tax liability last year. So using kind of that normally people look at that tax liability increase year over year. That's not a good number to look at this year because of the significant delta last year. A couple of other things that are just useful to know that impact the town. One, you'll see $30,000 in here towards the school lunch, school nutrition fund. So we believe there's going to be a deficit, basically owed from the school to the town of $30,000. So we're working to zero that out. We also, in our budget, what we talked about is we plugged the leak. So we added $20,000 into the school nutrition fund section of the budget so that we stop racking up deficits with the town. So it looks like you're doing year over year budget increases. It looks like there's a little bit of an increase, but the reality is we've been spending that money anyway. And so this is just trying to make it more obvious.
If I can pause you just real quick. Lauren, I texted you a photo of it. If you were able to look at your phone, if you wanted to follow along with what he's saying.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Two other things that the school is doing to try and set ourselves up for stability long term. One is management of the fund balance. Our target is to have to always have a 5% fund balance. What that means is to have basically the fund balance reserve that's unallocated equal to 5% of the budget. That will bring us in line with where the state law is coming and changing here in the next 2 years. That's where we should be. The other thing that we're doing, which at the recommendation of the auditors, is the creation of a contingency reserve. The goal is, again, to get that up to 5% of the budget over time. We look at it as there's effectively a net zero change to the total dollars being at play here. That 19.5 was actually pulled out of the operating budget. So there are certain lines that we've found over the years in the school budget that tend to be budgeted high because sometimes, like for instance, special ed testing requirements, sometimes that can get really expensive really quick. And so they budget that every year. What we're trying to do is put that into a contingency reserve so that we don't have to keep raising that money every year. Once we get that 5%, we'll have the dollars in case we need them, but will end up being a savings to the taxpayer over time. Sky, what else do you have to add?
Thank you, got it.
All right.
Perfect. Anybody have any questions for Zach or Sky?
I was there, one other thing, the one thing that did get pulled out, based on feedback from the select board, was the expectation is that the $15,000 for Matty Dodge, improvements, maintenance, basically the aeration and the seating will be handled by the town, in the town budget. So that was the one thing that got pulled out the last.
Perfect. That was one of my questions, was just making sure, it doesn't matter to me which budget it goes in, as long as somebody is accounting for it and we're in coordination, then we're good to go. The other question that Janet just emailed me about is, something that we were gonna discuss tonight around, social service agency requests. And I know we had received a request from the community fund for mental health services. I believe that some of that may fall within the school nurse purview as well. And so I just wasn't sure if that was on your radar. And again, if it was something that you had considered in your budget.
So it was something that we considered in our budget. I think you're referring to the letter that was received that talked about the school, there's some funding that had been provided that was not gonna be ongoing. It wasn't the discussion and it did not make it into the budget.
Okay, so all of that is something that we should consider, as we build our budget.
Correct.
This is Maria Forney. I actually wrote the proposal for that budget request. Can you tell me more about the decision not to approve it? We have a Islesboro Community Fund board meeting this week, and I'm going to be providing an update. So I'm wondering if there's any more background you can share on the decision.
You want to tackle that one, Scott?
I think that Kate's hope, when we discussed that with her, was to work with the school counselors and try to find other funding for that in terms of grants, and also explore in students' insurance covering that. And I think that we also looked at that starts in with February 25. So we said that
Yes.
funding would be
Yeah.
expiring,
Right.
so that we thought there might be enough in our health contracted services to get us through that, the rest of the year. And we look at, that gives us time to explore the funding needs for this program in the following fiscal year's budget.
Okay, a question for you, Maria. The $70,000 request that we have to the town of Islesboro, is that a request that has already been split? So you requested a certain amount from the school and a certain amount from the town, or is that
Yes.
70? Okay, so the
So
$70,000.
the 70,000 was the initial proposal, and then in discussions with Janet, she suggested that there be two proposals, one for the town and one for the school. So I did that. I broke them into two proposals, and I sent her a revised budget request for 45,000 from the town. And so that's what I'm wondering is that, has that been evaluated? This is the service that is the pilot program that the Islesboro Community Fund is sponsoring for 24 months. It's going to come to an end in February of 2025. And for those in the room that may not be aware, the providers are very well received. The feedback from the health center has been excellent. There's been a waiting list to see these counselors from the moment they arrived on the island. So I'm a little concerned, given the impact that they've had being so positive, just dropping it altogether. So I'm just curious if that's what's been decided, or if it can be revisited if the town request is 45 instead of 70.
Right, so this is the first time that we are looking at the social services budget at all today. So we haven't discussed it as a select board at all. And I know that Janet has been on vacation, so the documents that we have still request the full 70, which it sounds like is what you need to fund the entire program, not what you need to have, not if it was going to be split between the town and the school.
Yeah, that's correct. So I sent an updated proposal, 45 from the town, and then I sent a proposal to Julie at the school asking for 25. And so two different proposals, and it takes into account that we are expecting insurance to start covering some, but not all of the services provided to island residents.
Gotcha, okay. And so I guess the question for the school board is, do you feel like you have the resources to cover a $25,000 commitment, or is it something that you think that we should consider funding it at $70,000 in the town budget for next year?
I would say based on our negotiations and discussions within the school board, we're tapped out in
Okay.
terms of what we're comfortable pushing forward.
Okay. So, I would, looking at the, I feel like we're sort of going a little bit backwards in our spreadsheets, but did you find the stick for the?
Yes, it's on here, but we may have an issue with the orientation of it
Oh, gotcha,
because it got scanned in two
Oh,
directions.
gotcha, okay. If I can, yeah,
I would recommend that we keep it still in the same order, knowing that the school has opted to not provide anything for this. And then still keep it within the same when we do the slate of them. Instead of trying to make a decision on that one right now.
no, I was gonna recommend that we just look at the, provider spreadsheet.
Oh, gotcha.
So that we started with that document and then we could go, back in the spreadsheets. I can't find that piece of paper. So.
You need anything else from the school?
Nope, I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, perfect. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, well, I guess we will go in order because I can't find that script. Oh, I found it. Are they scanned in the order that we have them?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
It's not letting them rotate the page.
Is it right next to the trash can that doesn't do
Yeah,
anything?
It tells me I need a free trial.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Well, I'm sorry for the technical issues for the folks online tonight. Hopefully, this at least gives you enough information for us to follow along. And since it's in order, maybe what we can do is we can start with waste and, so we've got 3 different budgets to look at tonight for folks who weren't here when we started. The waste, the recreation department, and then the agency fund. So it's a relatively short number of lines that we have to go through and we can discuss the $70,000 request for ICF when we get to that spreadsheet. Is that okay for you, Maria?
Sure, I'll stay on the call. Yep.
Great, thanks.
Also, the budget is posted on the town website if anybody wants to access it there, and
Okay.
it might be easier to see that way.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
So there is a link on the website if that is easier, which is likely going to be easier if folks have the ability to look at an Excel spreadsheet on their computer.
Okay, I'm gonna try to find it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, perfect. Is there anybody here to talk about the waste budget? Hearing none, we will just go line by line. It looks like there is just small increases in 46-1 for waste removal based on current spending this year. Looking at 46-3, we have the cost of living increase. And then goes up around $20,000, because of the Casella contract, which we just renegotiated. And everything else, some things have gone up a little bit, some things have gone down a little bit.
Do we know what well, I guess that's no change. The jump from $100 in 23 for dues and annual report up to 500 in 24. There's still 400 sitting there.
The dues
That's
under
40-10.
10. I don't know,
That, I mean, it's,
although I would expect that it may be timing if it's a dues situation, although we didn't see anything actual in 4010, so we can flag that as a question for Janet when she's back.
sure. Just for my own, because my own ignorance to this, what is the money we're spending on Acre Island?
So that's to remove waste from 700 acre, so I believe it's PYY has a contract to barge waste off the island.
Gotcha. Ah, that's, I didn't realize you did that.
Any questions on waste? All right, other than the dues, like that, and I'll send a summary email to Janet with our questions after the meeting tonight. Library, you wanna walk us through the library?
So the library is requesting, it's pretty much the same, what you see here. The only thing missing is following our meeting last night of the trustees. The library has decided to take on a sustainable library initiative project, which is a nationally recognized project, with educational libraries, public libraries, municipal libraries, et cetera. And effectively what it is a checklist of items to make the operation of the library more eco-friendly, and sustainable for the future. And at the moment, I suggested to them last night that they try to come up with a sum that they would like to request this year for small tangible things that they can get started on. The process is expected to take 18 to 24 months. But at this point, they don't have any major moves to make. So they're working on things like replacing incandescent bulbs in exit signs with LEDs, replacing manual thermostats with automated thermostats. And so I suggested that they request about $1,000 to make sure that over the next 14 months, they have some amount of money to take on the small projects that they're able to do. I would foresee in the future, there may be hopefully a fundraising effort done to do the bigger things like heat pumps and insulation projects. But I just didn't want them to go into the start of an 18-month project with no money to spend on it. So they would like $1,000 for small tangible upgrades that they can do themselves over the next 12 months or so to get a head start on future big projects. They've had a couple site visits from the Energy Committee. They've done some installation work that's been very successful in the elevator shafts and attic. And are currently working with the town on sealing up the basement and are going to be discussing some parking lot projects in the future. So they would like to add $1,000 for sustainability upgrades, we could call
So this is $1,000 in addition to what's currently on.
it. Yeah,
in-
this is
in
the
this
standard
spreadsheet.
operating budget that they are
Okay,
looking for, and then an additional item that they were effectively unaware of asking for until about 5 o'clock last night,
gotcha, okay.
so.
Do we think that that would count as part of the library program, since it's part of the library sustainability program? And then increase 35-6 from 1,000 to 2,000?
I wonder if that's not for their basic, like their day-to-day programming like Legos and 3D printing and such. Personally, I would suggest that it be put in a separate line item, just so that they are, they have that pool of money specifically to work from. But if it's easier to just do it all in the same, It's the best way to put it in the most neutral way. I wouldn't want to give them an additional sum of money and open the door for them to spend it on whatever they would like it to spend it on. If they intend to do this sustainability project, they have to get started on these specific little things.
Okay, and it sounds like it might be helpful to know how much it costs the town
Yeah, I
in
asked,
total to, enroll in that.
so the
program.
program itself is a $250 initial fee. And then there's an annual due or membership fee to maintain the certification once it arrives. I'm not sure that number off the top of my head. I did ask that Melissa get working on, presumably with Brooke Law, the chair of the board, putting together a list of items that, so that they can do exactly that. So they can say, if the thermostat's gonna be $40 and there's 4 of them, there's 160 they'll need light bulbs. So we can wait on that too, if you wanna give them a little more time to put that together. But
No, my only question would be if, any of the energy efficiency expenses would be something that the energy committee would have already budgeted for with their project.
Jessica was there, last night and didn't mention anything about whether they have budgeted anything specific for this.
Okay.
So, not that she was asked that exact question, but I think it would have come up organically if there was a plan in place already.
Right, let me check with them, because I think I think they did ask for, part of what their, of the 50 or the 65,000 that they're asking for, did specifically, was for heat pumps for the library also.
Okay.
And so, but that's gonna be the bigger ticket items, not the little,
Right,
not the little guys.
Yep.
But let me make a note to reach out to Myra.
okay. Well, I'd say let's add $1,000 in a new sustainability program line for right now. And, flag it as something that we need to just do a little bit of circling on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Anything else on library? All right, museum. Is there anybody online here to talk about the museum rec budget? Okay, hearing none.
I do know that they're wanting to increase, I can explain the $4,000 increase in for the hostess hours.
Okay, great.
They're wanting to have it open, quite a bit more. I think they're wanting to double their hours at the lighthouse over the summer in order to have more people that are in and increase the visibility of it, especially with the recent storm damage. But that's to make sure that there is someone that is there on site with them. I don't know how much they pay per hour or anything like that, or if it's a volunteer and that's just the additional cost of having it open during that time. But that's what the main uptick is for all of those things, is just having it open for a longer duration for more months out of the year.
Yeah. And it looks like the, you don't have to budget for an Island Fellow this year. With the increases, they're up around $300 from last year.
I'm sorry, Melissa.
Yeah.
for you, clarification, the host is 36 hours per week. Is that money that goes to the individual?
I unfortunately don't know if they pay them an hourly or if that's just what they budget for keeping the doors open for having them there.
So,
I thought that it was that part of it was a volunteer, but it might be the main hostess that handles the money and different things like that. And I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question.
that would be helpful to get clarification on, because if it's paid people, that would be one thing, but if it's, I'm not sure what otherwise that $8,000 would be for. Not that it's not well worth it, it's just be nice to have clarity on that.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Any other questions on Recreation Museum? Okay. Next, actually, I guess a question that I have too is 25-10 for the website. It looks like they haven't spent any of their website money this year. And that was a new expense last year.
It probably just hasn't been built out yet, because their website is up and running. And so we need to make sure that it has been, invoiced.
I'd say a similar question with the maintenance, not that I would suggest at all that we remove limit money that they need for maintenance, especially this year. But it's a similar situation, they had 10,000 last year, haven't touched it. Right?
Yeah.
And then are now asking for 10,100 more, and my hope is that they're gonna combine the two. And come out with 20,000 for this year to really beef it up, but
So that just has to not be updated, because I know that all of that was spent during they were talking about how much money they didn't have. And so I think that that's just that's already gone.
okay.
I thought the ones that had parentheses around them meant that that's how much money they still have in it, and the ones that don't have the parentheses is how much money has been spent.
The prices would be an overspend.
I can't remember what Janet said last time, because we had the same question.
I think it's how much money they have remaining, which I hate, but it is what we have right now. Rather than being able to compare apples to apples.
Right, no,
Yeah.
absolutely, I just, I want, the last budget meeting that I saw was, they were talking about how they were already, like, all of the, for the doors, windows, and they were trying to figure out how to get more money for shutters. And to try to make sure that the things are starting to get sheared up. And then the dues is also included in their equipment repair and interior maintenance and exterior.
Okay, so we can just ask to clarify that where things stand there and.
Yeah, I do know that they did spend
They must,
all of it.
yeah, right, like if logic dictates, they
Yeah.
must
Yep.
have spent it.
And then that was also when I found out, ghastly, that, the members of the Lighthouse Committee are the ones that are paying for the wreath themselves out of pocket.
Hmm.
It doesn't come from any line item from the town or anything. And so all of the decorations that go up are the committee members that are,
Cause we do budget for like wreaths and things around different holidays, so, but I think that that happens around particularly with the cemetery, so I don't know, we'll have to check when we get to that. If
that is flags and cleanup and stuff like that for the cemeteries. And then the little wreaths that they have for decoration that the cemetery is required to put out by the state. But
Well, we can add into that.
I'd like to, if we can.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well,
Yes.
let's
Later.
clarify what we have right now.
Yes.
Okay. Recreation harbor facilities. Is anybody here from the harbor committee? Okay. It looks like there's no increase in the personnel. I just have a note here around COLA for those, but I know that those are stipended positions and sometimes are handled slightly differently than kind of traditional hourly employees, so, we can clarify that with Janet. Otherwise, it looks like
I wish one of them said something about this stuff.
sorry, I just wanna check something really quickly here. And it looks like we have $8,000 in contingency.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that that is for finger floats, because I know that
yeah,
that is a question, that we should need to start planning to replace.
yeah, they're talking about the finger floats, they were talking about the pier itself, at Critical Point. With those damages to the wood,
Yeah,
and that's gonna need to be thought about.
yeah. Okay. It looks like roughly a, $1,800 increase. So any questions on harbor facilities? Okay, shellfish conservation is the same as last year. It looks like they spent everything from their budget last year. Recreation. I think I see a couple folks from the rec committee online.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for hanging in there with us.
Oh, no
Do you wanna
problem.
Talk us
Hi.
through your just kind of summary of your budget request?
Sure. Rob, do you want me to speak to it and you can fill in?
That would be great, Lauren. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. I think just starting from last year, the big increases from last year, really revolve around amenities that we were getting for free that we now, are being asked to pay for. The biggest example being the rental of the space, which will be $4,000 this year. There's also the vans, which we'll be renting from the school. I think there was a lot of wear and tear on the vans last year. And then swim transportation, which we just found out we're getting ready to embark on our spring swim lessons through the school, that we will not have access to that YMCA bus, we won't be able to depend on it, put it that way. And so we're planning for that in our next year's budget. The remainder balance that we have this year, the 7,900, a good portion of that will go towards the swim lessons that we're about to start this year. So the big increases are really the $2,000 for the vans, which I think all of that is under 25-10, and 30-10 is the rental for the ICC space. The vans are 30-12. Yes, the vans are the 30-12. The only other comment I have is it's actually a cost savings opportunity. We had assumed last year that the state would pay for many of our ferry tickets, and Rob can probably speak to this better than I can. That is 30-12, where we're sort of in the negative $885 over what we had planned on spending. In actuality, that was billed to the town. It seemed as if the ferry service was willing, or the state was willing, to cover those costs. So we have it in next year's budget because it's defaulting to being billed to the town. I don't know if that's, somebody at the select board or the town would prefer that, but I think there's opportunity to reduce some of that cost.
Right.
Okay.
So Lauren, if I could just interject real quick, historically, what the camp did is that I essentially petitioned the ferry service to give campers comp tickets. And there was some confusion regarding who to get a hold of and who would actually pull the trigger and make that decision on the side of the ferry service. And Janet said that it would just be more predictable if they bill the town. So I think what Lauren is saying here is that we might have a cost savings opportunity. However, I think we're budgeting for the worst case scenario of the town having to pay for any off-island trips that the campers take. Does that make sense to you, Lauren?
Yep.
I believe that's what we spoke about before.
Yep.
Great,
Okay.
that makes sense. And maybe it's something that we can raise with John King, our ferry service rep, just to understand, he might be able to help kind of navigate with the ferry service, how to streamline that process and hopefully see some savings.
That sounds great.
All right. Any questions for the rec department? Just a note, we typically handle revenue at the last budget workshop. So it looks like it's on the calendar for the 27th, and it looks like this year we're budgeting 15,000 and change for camp camp fees, and last year it looks like maybe we have brought in 18,800 so far.
Okay. Would
I
you like
think
us
so,
to
yes.
be on the call for that meeting? Rob and I can review or,
I mean, that is up to you. I think, we're not talking about a huge difference, and I have a feeling I'd have to look at, but we don't have that spreadsheet yet to know what we budgeted this year. I have a feeling that what we have been on this spreadsheet is just a note of the actuals, not of the budget. So, it's certainly better to be slightly conservative and come in with a good surprise rather than a bad surprise at the end of the year. So that makes sense to me.
I think 15 is a
And
good
that's on
number.
the 27th, you said?
Yes. It is that we had to push the health center budget today to the 27th, so fair warning, the 27th is likely to be a bit of a marathon. So maybe what we can also do is, once we have the spreadsheet out, I'm happy to give one of you guys a call and clarify any, if there's questions that come up. We certainly would love to have you attend the meeting and speak to it yourself. I understand if it's not possible, so.
Okay. Sounds good.
No, that would be great if you can do that. I'll make every effort to be there.
All right, awesome, thank you. It looks like we are still not budgeting any porta potties for Greater Point. I think that has typically been handled by generous donation from that company. So the recreation total is of about $12,000. So any questions on the rec budget in total? All right, thank you for hanging in with us. Oh, no, Maria,
They're good.
we are getting to the last sheet, our provider agencies.
I have answers for the questions that were asked of me. Yes, the lighthouse pays for the hostess to be out there. And so the doubling of it is essentially the doubling of the hours.
Okay.
Did that make sense, Lauren?
Sorry, I muted myself. Melissa, could you repeat that just a teeny bit louder?
The lighthouse, the hostess at the lighthouse is paid
Yep.
hourly. And so that is money going to the hostess that is out there for it. And since they're essentially wanting to double their hours, that's the double of the request for the payment of them.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes. That's the only thing I had, but that was one thing I could get the answer on real quick. And I'll find out the question about the energy committee with the lighthouse coalition. Cool.
What they paid,
I don't know what the hourly is.
I'm just thinking like, does it have to be, I assume it has to be minimum wage, right? If it's, or is it sort of a volunteer position that is then
Compensated, I don't
compensated?
know.
That would be my only question would we be, do we have to register them then as an employee and are we liable at all for not being paid? At least minimum.
That'd be a fun question for Janet.
Yeah.
Cause I know that they get their payment out of the town, so
Yeah.
by logging the hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I can put it as a question for Janet on here. All right, the provider agencies, these are typically small amounts that we have requests in writing for each of the agencies that have made a request this year. Are there any questions about kind of the standard provider agencies before we dig into the ICF request?
Nope.
So thinking about about adding the ICF request, I do think it probably is appropriate to go here. I think the only other place where we could consider putting it would be under the health center budget. But I think it probably makes sense to go here as a special project that is, certainly done in coordination with the health center, but not a specific health center program.
It's not part of their money or anything like that. So I'm in agreement. I think that it should go under special providers.
And I feel like when I mean, my take on this is when, the community fund came to us with this pilot program that, you know, we had indicated interest in continuing to support it if it felt like the results were, you know, were positive. So, I understand things are changing a little bit on the school side of things, so it may not make sense to split it. I mean, I would be willing to put $70,000 in the budget at the town level to be able to continue that program. So
Yeah.
that is my suggestion. How are,
I agree, this is Lauren. I agree, this is a really, really valuable program and very worth our putting it in the budget. I have a question, I'm just curious. Is the program working with the school? I'm not looking for whether or not it should be in the school budget. I'm just curious about the relationship between this program and the school. Is that a working relationship?
Yes.
Well,
It is. It's a working relationship. There are two providers. So there's one that's meeting mostly with adults. And those meetings are taking place in the library at a time when the library is not heavily used. And then the other provider is meeting with school-age children primarily. And it is a working relationship both with the school and also with the health center. And both providers are providing reports in terms of trends they're seeing, recommendations for things that the health center in particular can do from a proactive standpoint. But to answer your question, Lauren, yes, it is a collaborative working relationship, and the ICF partnered with the school in sort of all aspects of designing this program and selecting the therapist.
Well, can I just say I applaud the work that you all have done in getting this launched. And that's just, the ICF has done a major contribution to the island by setting this in motion.
Well, I'm so happy to hear you say that. Thank you. We feel it really is impactful, and like I said, it's a way to, you know, be proactive and help residents develop some new skills to manage stress and coping skills and building resilience and all sorts of other things. And there's been a waiting list. I just was in touch with one of the providers a couple of days ago, and there's still a waiting list. So I think it's in high demand, and I think it's in everyone's interest to have it continue. So I'm really encouraged by the comments I'm hearing this evening. I don't know if there are any questions or other things I can answer.
so, I mean, hearing that there's a wait list, is this funding a certain number of hours for those two providers? Or a certain number of appointments? It's a number of
Right.
days?
So they both come one day a week.
Okay,
So it's in person on the island. You know, they're so, and given the ferry and this and that, the number of hours that they can each meet with clients, you know, is limited. But that's how it's working right now. And I'm just so happy they're coming in person. And then when we've had issues with weather or what have you, they have been available for telehealth. But the program is really to support these in-person meetings.
Are there any other questions for Maria?
No. So, I was under the impression that the relationship that this program had with the school was effectively that the school provided a meeting space. And that was kind of where it ended. So I don't know that it would be reasonable to ask the school to pay a chunk of it as it is. Although if they want to expand that, I can personally attest to the individual who's been at the school, because she was my school guidance counselor when I was 13 in Thomaston, and she's fantastic. So if there was a way to expand it at all, I would support asking the school to contribute more to it in an attempt to keep it alive.
Yeah.
I think she's really great at what she does. She's half the reason I came to school here. So if we can keep her in people's lives, that'd be great. But I think if anyone's gonna support it, it should be us. Unless we want the school to really get itself involved, and I don't know what it sounds like they don't wanna do that, so.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, it is nice to have, instances when, we kick in kind of 50-50, but at the same time, without, a lot of coordination, there, we run the risk of accidentally funding something partially rather than fully, and it's all, from my perspective, it's coming out of the same taxpayer bucket, and so whether it's us funding it or the school, it's all taxpayer money, so.
I'm 100% for it. I actually wonder if we shouldn't, in hopes of potentially expanding it, I would actually want to take it to 75. It's that even number to make sure that they have adequate transportation, they have the ferry, they have everything else, and that way we keep the two providers that are here with the caveat. I don't want the school to have anything to do with it. I want them to still continue to meet at the school. I want them to continue to still have that kind of access. But I like it better as a ICF health center collaboration. Because then kind of the same thing, either you overfund it, underfund it, and then you have too many people that are touching it. It's working, and it's working really well, and I see the benefits for our all of the citizens of our island. And so in order to ensure that it stays, I want to make sure that it is funded and that as many people can't touch it as possible.
So Maria, if you were to think about what kind of, as Melissa just said, what if we put it up to 75 to make sure there was a cushion there to ensure its continuity? What is does 5,000 sound like a good, reasonable number? Or would you expect some, a massive increase in expense all of a sudden to keep this alive beyond that 70,000? Or does that 70,000 factor in a bit of a cushion for you already?
I'd be much more comfortable with 75. The Islesboro Community Fund is currently funding it up to 100 per year. And I arrived at 70 a little cautiously based on the new billing system that is going into place at the health center and some not exact math around the ability to bill some of the patients' insurance. So I've been in touch with the health center and the two mental health providers to sort of estimate how much they think the cost to the town would be, given the ability to bill providers, to bill insurance companies. So, I didn't really feel comfortable coming to the town and asking for 100. And so I've come at this estimate. I'd be much more comfortable with 75. If we don't spend it, fantastic. But it's a little bit, it's not exact. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
It doesn't really, but
Yeah, no, I think it does.
Yeah, because
I-
even if you take into account, like if we ask what was spent up till now, it won't factor in potential insurance payments or anything that would help counteract it.
Time town spends billing out or.
Right.
Okay. Good. let's put in 75,000 then.
That is a good idea.
Oh,
you.
oh
Anything
my
else?
I
gosh.
like it. I like it.
Oh
Oh,
my
you know,
gosh.
I'm sorry if you sat here in agony for the entire meeting. That was not the intention.
Hey, on the bright side,
It was
I
well
mean,
worth it.
I'll give you just a little bit more, and so, thank you guys very much.
Oh, oh my goodness, this is phenomenal. You are all so amazing, and this news is gonna be extremely well received at the board meeting tomorrow. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for all your great work, Maria.
Oh, you're welcome, Lauren. Appreciate that so much.
All right, so that is all of the spreadsheets. Oh, wait, we have one more. The outreach worker is also here. I have the same question. It looks like there's a note about the cost of living, but the number hasn't changed, so I just want to make sure that that is,
Right, that it goes in.
yeah. Is there anything else on the agencies?
No, I think that the ones that asked for increases, like Waldo Community Action Partners, I think that their letters were well worded as to why they would request just that little bit of extra, and I don't see a big jump with anything.
Yeah, W capital sounds totally reasonable if they really are providing, like, what did they say, thousands and thousands to.
Yeah.
Oh, here,
34,000?
30, 40, almost
39.
40,000.
Yeah.
They're only
Shay?
asking for 78.
Yeah, yes, Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, would you clarify, it does look like, I mean, I would think that there should be at some point a cost of living increase for the outreach worker, but yet it's not reflected in the budget. Is that 3.2? Am I missing something here in terms of the process?
Yeah, I have that flagged as a question for Janet. It looks like, Janet typically puts the 3.25 there, when she's anticipating that increase. But, like you said, the number hasn't changed, so I just want to make sure that, to understand either perhaps, there was something that didn't happen last year, and so we're okay, it's kind of built in already in that number, or we may need to increase that a little bit to reflect the cost of living increase.
Great, thank you, thank you.
Oh, I think I know what it is. 15 hours a week. Cause that's for all of her stuff. I don't think that's just for her hourly. That's also for supplies or anything that she also can, like, travel. And so the 15,000 is her entirety for her position, not just her wages.
Okay.
Cause there's no supplies or anything like that. And so, cause of going up to 10,831 as of now, or that's what she still has, that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Why it was 6,000 and then going up, because then she was doing more hours, more outreach, and then working with the health center more. And so it's probably not, she's not anticipating raising it past the 15,000, but that she would give her whatever her hourly wage is, that 3.25% increase. Cause she's still well within her budget for this year.
Yeah, there's certainly plenty of wiggle room there. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah.
Not knowing the math behind it, that we can get the clarification.
Yes.
All right, anything else budget related that anybody wants to bring forward tonight?
Okay, I just want to make sure that I communicate correctly to the ICF board tomorrow, and I am not very informed on the process here. So is this 75 confirmed, or is there some other step that I need to follow to ensure that this is going into the budget?
Yes, good question. So typically, our budget processes, we go through the budget one time, line by line, and get to a total. We then do a review of the entire budget when we understand the total budget size with all of the requests. So typically, so that budget review happens on the 27th of March. We have made some changes in the budget in the past based on, what we're seeing for overall tax impact. I would say traditionally, those changes happen with what we are putting away into capital reserves as much as possible, rather than taking away directly from programming. But I also don't want to say that this is going to be the last time that we look over the budget entirely, although, you know, it sounds like you've got strong support from the board right now, so that's,
Great,
That's-
that's very helpful. I'll plan to listen in if possible on the 27th, but that's very helpful. Thank you. I think I get the picture.
Yeah.
Great.
all right. Anything else from folks that are online? All right, with that, I would say we can adjourn our workshop. All right, awesome. Thank you. We'll see you next week.